Attorneys for singer R. Kelly are asking for his immediate release from prison, claiming that federal officials plotted to have him killed. He is serving a 30-year sentence for racketeering and trafficking. In an emergency filing today, his attorneys outlined what they called a cover-up.
My name is Michael Glenn Stein. I am presently an inmate at FCI Butner, North Carolina. I have been diagnosed with terminal cancer. I'm 67 years old. I have been incarcerated in the Federal Bureau of Prisons since 1982 with only one interruption of my federal sentences created by a successful prison escape. While incarcerated, I became a member of the Aryan Brotherhood. Over the years, I was elevated through the ranks and ultimately held the position commissioner of the Aryan Brotherhood. As the commissioner of the Aryan Brotherhood, I had a great deal of authority and power over other members of the AB in the Federal Bureau of Prisons. With this authority, I had the power to order beatings, stabbings, and executions that were carried out by other members of the AB. I was incarcerated in the Florence ADX Supermax prison facility for 13 months. During my time at ADX, I became familiar with a BOP official whose name is Childress. Mr. Childress held a position of authority. Childress had directed me to order assaults, beatings, and killings of inmates who had bothered BOP guards and other things. At the directions of Childress, I have ordered multiple assaults and homicides of various institutions. In exchange for ordering and or participating in these acts of violence, I and other members of the Aryan Brotherhood have received special privileges with the prisons in which we are housed. These privileges include no shakedowns, no cell searches, and the ability to freely traffic drugs all within the institution. I can provide the names of persons I have ordered, beaten, and killed at the explicit direction of Mr. Childress. The details of these incidents can also be confirmed by other witnesses. On or about February 2nd, 2023, I was housed in a special housing unit at USP Tucson. Without any warning, I was approached in my cell for an unexpected official visit by Mr. Childress and Warden Gutierrez. They took me out of my cell, brought me to an office area in the special housing unit. They advised me I was being sent to FCI Butner. He further advised that there was an inmate at Butner who poses a threat to the Bureau of Prisons and government, a person whose high-priced lawyers are going to expose a bunch of damaging information that will harm other BOP officers and higher up. Childress said it was his job to make sure this didn't happen. He told me he would like to help to eliminate the problem. He asked if I was familiar with R. Kelly.
These are people who seek to kill Mr. Kelly rather than allow the corrupt criminal conduct of those who manufactured his convictions be exposed.
I said I was aware of who he was from the news. Childress told me that Kelly is a rapist. Kelly raped little white girls. He told me Kelly was scum. And he told me that Kelly was someone the Aryan Brotherhood would want gone, and that R. Kelly poses a threat to the BOP. Childress told me that I would be sent to FCI Butner. He said I would go to the medical center first, and I would be moved to Kelly's unit. Here, Childress told me that I was to execute Robert Kelly. Childress told me I would be charged for the murder, but the evidence would be mishandled. He further told me I would be transferred following the incident, and on the way I would be permitted to escape, much like I did when I first escaped from BOP custody a long time ago. My prior escape and the details surrounding it are a matter of public record. Childress told me I could live out the last of my days as a free man as long as I followed his instruction. I agreed to his proposal. Gutierrez, I arrived at Butner in October 2023. In my experience, transfers never happened that quickly. After arriving there, my diagnosis, he told me there was no treatment for my cancer, and he said, you need to do what you came here for. Butner is a medical facility, for those who don't know. At Federal Correctional Institute, Butner is medical. And sometimes they'll stash, sort of like a protective custody, sort of, but mostly medical. After arriving on my new unit, I found Mr. Kelly. I followed him. I watched him. I considered how I would carry out his hit. Prison execution was nothing new to me, but I am also a dying man. I have a lifetime of violence and homicide that I will be held to account for, presumably by the Lord, our Savior, JC. While much of my conduct have been sanctioned by Childers in the BOP, my ultimate judgment is not coming from them. I know that for sure. I began to think about the last of my days and what I want to do with them. I thought about the decades of violence and killings I have seen and participated in. I thought about the way that Childress uses inmates to serve his purposes like animals and never faces consequences for any of it. I thought about how this happens every day in the BOP without anyone knowing or caring. With all of that on my mind, I approached R. Kelly. I thought about carrying out the act I was sent to do. I was prepared to carry out the execution, but in the moment when I got to Mr. Kelly, I made a different choice. I told him the truth. I told him that I had been sent to kill him. I told him how and by who. I told him his life was absolutely in danger and prepared to undergo a polygraph examination. Blah, 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 blah. That is the official statement entered into the United States District Court, Northern District of Illinois, which is where Chicago is, which is where R. Kelly was convicted and sentenced to 30 years for having sex with children, amongst other things, by a Mr. Michael, Mikeal, Glenn Stein, who purports to be an Aryan Brotherhood commissioner. Now, as you may or may not know, I've done many stories about the Aryan Brotherhood. Wouldn't consider myself an expert, but I'm a semi-expert on them. This guy ain't... Well, first of all, there's no the commissioner. There's 3 commissioners. Him being a USB Tucson is known as a dropout yard. And this guy, I looked up some information on this guy. He was doing, I think in 92, he caught maybe like a federal robbery charge. And from his prison cell, he wrote a bunch of letters threatening judges, and they gave him like another 12 or 15 years. So he's been in prison over 30 years. He escaped briefly at one point during it. So this is who R. Kelly is purporting. R. Kelly's trying to get out. He's saying his life's in danger, not just from particular inmates, because remember, R. Kelly was assaulted already by a white Latin king, I think. He was stabbed with a golf pencil. The guy was kind of mentally ill, as are many inmates, even gang member inmates. In fact, many of the gang member inmates seem mentally ill. So Kelly just being in danger, this is interesting in the wake of the Tory Lanez thing. These celebrities have access to, when you get a long prison term, you don't want to give up the ghost. I mean, people want to get out. So these guys still have some money and lawyers. So now they're coming up with the most ridiculous ideas. So this guy has signed this affidavit. He submitted it to the court. He says he'll take a polygraph. That the Bureau of Prisons was using him, who was the Aryan Brotherhood leader, who was already beaten and unalived other inmates, guys that jumped on guards or people that were giving the Bureau of Prisons problems. Now, the best lie takes true elements and spins them out. And it is certainly true that guards will use the most violent, aggressive inmates to punish other inmates. Sometimes as far as, having an official booty grapist and throwing you in with them. If you cause the guards problems, you spit on a female guard or you do something beyond the pale. So, but this guy ain't in the Aryan Brotherhood. And specifically, R. Kelly he can't just say he's in danger from a particular inmate, because then they might just move you to another prison or put you in protective custody. He wants to get out. He got 30 years in 2021. He had probably been in custody a couple years. So probably 51. probably 2043 or something is his release date. I mean, he's got probably damn near 20 years left. And he wants to come home, and the only way he could get a judge to let him come home is to say that the Bureau of Prisons itself has R. Kelly's life in danger. So this is very creative. Now, one thing you should know about inmates serving long periods of time, they don't have nothing to do to kill the time, and they're notoriously litigious. Now, they should have the right to file lawsuits, because sometimes there's conditions in the prison that violate cruel and unusual and other things. And, motions are important to take care of those. And then, of course, sometimes people are totally innocent or were missentenced or didn't get due process. So certainly, it's good that they file reports. But for people that are just crazy people and want something to do, right? So I get to go to the law library, stay in the law library all day, write up stuff. There's people that are always doing lawsuits, just trying to get money. A friend of mine, we were supposed to have started his documentary, but he's been dragging his feet. He was accompanying his Mexican friend from Detroit to Indiana to sell some work. And or really to pick up some money, and they had a little deal for somebody in Indiana that he had been dealing with it. And they go in the hotel room, and the guys come in with guns. So they kill my friend's Mexican friend. My friend is able to kill the guy with the AK-47. I think he wounds the other guy. He runs off, and they get away. They ended up getting caught for some other murders out of Fort Wayne, Indiana. And they're in prison. We were looking them up. And one of them just filed a lawsuit, I just thought of this, about a guard, implying he had been sexually assaulted and that a guard laughed at him in the medical wing. And I said, damn, dog, look at this. The guy that tried to kill you got raped in prison. And he laughed. He said, oh, that's probably just a lawsuit, because he did a lot of time. And it reminded me I hadn't been, in prison mind mode for quite some time. But people always filing lawsuits trying to get a couple bucks. Anytime you get assaulted in prison, you can try to get a couple bucks. Todd Asker, one of the real Aryan Brotherhood leaders out of California, got a big settlement, or big for being in prison, like maybe $50,000, $100,000, because at Pelican Bay, some Nuestra Familias, or some people from the Northern California Mexicans, were able to get out of, pop their own lock, or the guard accidentally popped a lock on their door when he was out, and they were able to come and stab him. So he got a settlement from the state. So this guy, Mike L. Glenstein, has filed over 100 lawsuits against the Bureau of Prison. This is what he does. Obviously, he's kind of crazy, but he likes feeling important and he likes battling with power, because he threatened judges. That's why he's still in prison right now. So that's a certain personality type. So what do I think is going on here with the so-called R. Kelly conspiracy? R. Kelly probably crossed paths with this guy, and they talked, and R. Kelly connected him to his lawyers. And listen, the lawyers probably can honestly say to the judge, I mean, we think he's telling the truth. R. Kelly's lawyer certainly didn't sit down and tell the guy to say this. Now, I'm sure to them, as to us in the general public, and especially to me, who knows, just from my studies and all these cases, of something about the Aryan Brotherhood and federal prison and all that this is absurd. But if the lawyer's just saying if this guy's willing to file this affidavit, this is what I just read is direct declaration of Michael Glenn Stein, U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Illinois, which is Chicago. Why wouldn't they turn it in? They don't technically, if you tell me a lie, but you don't tell me, Al, I'm lying, even if I'm pretty sure you are lying, I can pass your lie on to someone else if it's true. And if I'm ever questioned about it, I can say, well, this is what the guy said, and he signed the affidavit. So, interesting. So it's analogous to the Tory Lanez thing where they're clutching at straws. Tory Lane only probably has, maybe 6 more years left. Or how much time? Does he have? In California, you do half your time on your first offense. Would mean Tory only has 3 or 4 years left. Let's look up Tory Lane's release date. Parole eligible, July 2029. So Tory Lanez only has 4 years left until he's parole eligible. So Tory ain't got it that bad. Glenn Michael Stein, 67, with cancer that's probably terminal. He's got no reason not to lie. I mean, even if R. Kelly putting some money on his books for Zoom Zooms and Wham Whams or Wham Wham, which is what is big in the pen, the warm, loving mother's embrace of Mama Heron. But yeah, so R. Kelly's scraping the bottom of the barrel, looking for some way. He wants to get let out on home confinement. Not even to be exonerated of his charges, to be allowed to live at home on a tether because the Bureau of Prisons wants to kill him. And like I said, this reminds me of Mr. Daystar Peterson, who is parole eligible in July 2029. He only has 4 years left, but they had this witness who was there at the time the event happened and didn't speak up then, but now wants to speak several years later. For all you amateur lawyers out there, the problem is, once people get on a witness stand and a judge or jury decides to believe them or not, you don't ever revisit that. You can revisit a case because there was a procedural error, you didn't get your due process, possibly, some new DNA evidence, some very compelling new piece of evidence. But a person that was there when it happened and chose not to testify then, especially a high-profile case, he can't say he didn't know about it. Now suddenly having this story about, it's not very plausible, and as implausible as Tory Lane's recent attempts to try to get out, for which he enlisted. The way that Florida congresswoman who claimed the bombshell new evidence was going to come out, the reason why she was involved is because her friend Amber Rose, who is now a Republican spokeswoman, which is crazy, asked her to do it. So it's all a media hype, right? So how can you use the media to manipulate public opinion? Because if you get a bunch of people writing letters and pressuring, say, a senator, a congressman, a governor of a state, if you could somehow get such an upswell of public support that tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, well, I guess now you email your congressman, where you had, hundreds of thousands of people pressing the governor of Illinois or something, or the senator from Illinois about, R. Kelly's life's in danger, the hope that they would, because a senator or a congressperson has a lot of power. They can get you out of prison early. They can get you paroled, blah, blah, blah. So Amber Rose and them are trying to pressure Gavin Newsom because they know they're not going to get Tory Lanez back in court. Same thing with R. Kelly. You're not going to go back in court. The case has been adjudicated. So they're trying to get him out on home confinement because a guy that, who knows, this guy may be so crazy, he may think he is the commissioner of the Aryan Brotherhood, but he ain't. He ain't. So if you hear about R. Kelly's coming home and the conspiracy against R. Kelly, it's a guy who's written 100+ lawsuits against the federal government, who's threatened federal judges, and now him and R. Kelly probably concocted this in prison. R. Kelly's lawyers have plausible deniability. They don't technically know it's a lie. And why not give it a try? I mean, what are they going to do to R. Kelly? Put him in jail? He's already there. So the media is weaponized by everybody, right? The more I'm at the point now as someone that makes stuff and just knows how it goes, and I watch so many news things from so many eras. Remember, if you don't know who I am, before YouTube, I was making documentaries since '09. Before that, I got a master's in economics. I used to have to research stuff. I've been looking at news clips and old newspapers and old books and this and that for 20 years. And I now have realized any news story, especially now with any business stuff about a new technology, a lot of those stories are being seeded by people that are associated with the businesses to hype up stock market prices. Well, I don't want to get off topic, but the same thing goes on with public figures, famous people that are in prison, where their last gasp is to try to go viral, right? Create a story that captures the public imagination. Interesting, like for the average person who doesn't know much about prison, which, I mean, unless you're from the social classes that have people go to prison, you probably don't. But you might have heard of the Aryan Brotherhood, right? They've been in movies and they've been on Nat Geo. So if you heard about anything, you've heard about the area, the Crips and the Bloods of the Aryan Brotherhood. Now in America, when black people do violent things to other black people, that's not really news. They don't choose to make that newsworthy. So if R. Kelly said some black people at the Bureau of Prisons was using a black gang to kill them, probably they figured no one would care. But if you can get a white man to say, oh, we're the Aryan Brotherhood, a racist white supremacist gang, and we would want to kill R. Kelly because he little white girls. Well, first of all, he didn't do anything to little white girls. Second of all, I mean, I don't think that the Aryan Brotherhood is necessarily would want any of their daughters marrying a black man, but I mean, they're just violent criminals. They're all in prisons with black men who did violent crimes to white people, because that's what federal prison is, people who did stuff to people. Why would R. Kelly be special? So obviously on many levels, this is kind of ridiculous. It's creative, though. It's interesting. They know they have no hope of getting them out as far as the merits of the case. So trying to get him home on a bond, on like some type of home confinement, because his life's in danger from the Bureau of Prisons itself. A daring gambit. I predict it shall not win. I'll profit America dope.